Move the World is partnering with the Readiness Lab, the home for podcasts, webinars, and training in the field of emergency and disaster services. I'm George Siegel, and this is the Move the World podcast. Every week, we feature interviews with people dedicated to making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me on this week's Move the World podcast. Our goal every week is to introduce you to people who are doing something to try to make the world a better place. So I think you're really going to benefit from our guest today. My guest today is Hans Kullberg. He is a serial entrepreneur, has started an education nonprofit called Open Dreams, equalizing access to university scholarships for low-income students, helping over 200 students gain full scholarships to universities around the world, an organization that he calls his proudest achievement. And he's also written quite a children's book that we're going to talk about. Hans, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, George. It's nice to be here talking with you today.
Hans, the first question that I like to ask to all of my guests, tell me what you do to move the world.
Yes. So I run a nonprofit. That's an education nonprofit helping lower the barriers of education around the world, specifically university education. So with the goal of equalizing access to quality education, we work with high achieving, low income students, mostly in Africa, at getting them access to scholarships in universities, not just getting acceptance to universities, but also getting them access to entering a playing field that has long kind of been denied to a lot of really high achieving talent around the world. That's been my pride and passion, my nonprofit that I've been running with my co-founders for the last 7 years. However, due to an unfortunate tragic experience to my family, I've really dedicated my life. This happened last year. I've dedicated my life towards spreading the love, the light, the joy of my dear daughter Aviva through a lot of different acts of service and acts of helping others. One is spreading the message through a children's book, but another is really speaking about the most tragic loss that any parent can experience of losing a child, what that looks like on the inside, and really, how supporters, families, friends, colleagues can really best support those that are going through a really unimaginable experience.
Yeah, no, I think I speak for most parents. I can't even imagine the pain that must have been for your family with that kind of loss. I mean, I have 5 children, and I get upset over the little things, and then when something tragic happens, I mean, it's just heartbreaking. So I'm so sorry for your loss. Getting back to the nonprofit that you set up, because I want to talk about the book that you've written and everything, but how did you get into doing that? That's not kind of like a mainstream thing where you go, hey, I think I'll help all these kids over in Africa that can't get scholarships. What got you in that direction?
Yeah. So George, I was actually watching that film that you actually made, License to Parent. So this is just recently, and I noticed that one of the guiding paths or passion or driving forces behind that was really knowing that the paths of life are really set by the family in a big part of sense, and nobody really has control over where they're born, what family they're born into, what condition they're born into. And it's something that really stuck with me at a very early age when my parents, both immigrants to this country in the United States, my father's from Sweden, my mother's from the Philippines. They came to the United States to pursue their PhD, to get a higher education, and then really go out and get good jobs and do good things with the world, and really instill their children with education. However, I know for a fact that is not the case with all children that are born into this world. But I do believe in the theory of tabula rasa, meaning every child is born with a blank slate. Every child has a ability that can be shaped, through their environment, and what environment they actually do go through is something that many of us don't get to choose. And so that's been the guiding force behind Open Dreams, and it really is that we're trying to access, education and open their dreams for as many children as we can. And so just to touch on, how we founded Open Dreams, we really started with an idea. This was planted by a seed when my one co-founder, Christina, she met a gentleman from Cameroon studying at the London School of Economics. They're both students there. This gentleman was, his name is Blaise Bouma. He grew up in a very small, poor farming village in Cameroon. Didn't really have access to really understand what the process is, how to navigate getting into a Western or even any university for that matter. High achieving student, number one in his class. He came across a volunteer worker who was in Cameroon just passing by, and he really befriended her and said, "Hey, will you help me navigate this, SAT, this TOEFL process, this college application, and getting a scholarship?" Which she did, and she did virtually. She went back to the United States. She was able to connect through, at that time, Skype and WhatsApp and Facebook and email, and really be able to give him the guidance, that support and structure of saying, these are the steps that you need to do. These are the scores you need to have. This is kind of how you navigate the process. And by the way, let me try to figure out if there's scholarships that are geared towards students from your background. And because of that model, she really helped him accelerate, and he eventually got not one but three full scholarships to three different schools. He went to Washington Lee University in the United States, ended up going to London School of Economics for his grad program. And then eventually he just graduated Harvard Business School last year. And he's doing really great things now back in Africa, actually working on really cool projects. But because of that initial meeting between him, Christina, and then eventually myself, when they told me about his journey and his path, being an entrepreneur and really loving replicable models, I said, this is really a great model that we can actually replicate. We have a lot of friends that are passionate, that could be mentors. There's a lot of great talent out there. Let's connect that and bridge that digital divide, which, this world is becoming a much smaller place. And all you really need is a connection to the internet and a computer, which I would say that is not a given, especially in Cameroon where we work. Having internet, having electricity, which goes out every single day without fail, whether it's 20 minutes or 2 hours, is not always a guarantee. And so what we do is try to provide those resources, as well as, a defined place where students can work, and then give them guidance through. It started with just 10 mentors and 10 mentees. And through the years, we've helped over 200, as you said, over 200 students gain full scholarships to universities around the world. Many more have come through our program. Unfortunately, not all can get full scholarships, but
sure.
But we do try to help as many as we can through undergrad as well as graduate programs. And it's just really taken on a life of its own. We're now a registered UN consultative agency, so we help the UN on issues that are on the ground in Cameroon. And really the sky's the future. So the sky's the limit rather, but really just trying to really help as many individuals that we can.
Sure. I love what you're doing on a lot of different levels. First of all, you're helping people that probably would have a much different life if you weren't able to get in and help them. But you really embody what I wanted this podcast to be about, which is people that have an idea or a thought of something they want to do that could make a difference. And they might just sit on it for years. They might just think, I can't do it. It's going to be too hard. But you actually did it. And when you tell a story like that, you're changing lives.
Yeah, no, I'm a very proactive person, and I don't like sitting still. I really think, if you have a really good idea, you should act on it. I think not all my ideas are successes, definitely not. But when there's, that reward of actually helping so many people, which to me, having sold a couple businesses in the past, this is really what gives me the most pleasure. It gives me a lot of fulfillment knowing that, going by that, teach a man the fish rather than give a man the fish, giving them the tools of education really helps elevate their entire platform, entirety of what they can do in their lives, and really give them that key to really unlock all of their goals and ambitions. And so education is important to me. There's a lot of other, great initiatives, from climate change to, feeding, the hungry, but education, I think, has that, that power to really perpetuate throughout their community, throughout their families, and really uplift not just one individual, but their entire, network. So
yeah, and the example you gave went full circle. The young man that came over here and seemed to excel in education, then goes home and uses that to help his people. It doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, no, exactly, and it's what we really preach. We don't want to, be a brain drain and have a lot of our high achieving scholars. This is one, criticism that is valid. We don't want our scholars to leave and not necessarily come back and be the doctors and the engineers and the social leaders that we have. And there's a lot of room for growth. But what we do instill in our program is actually a community service requirement, so that our students can get out into the community, do something as simple as planting trees or picking up trash, and really understand the problems that they have, so that when they go into the classroom as freshmen in college, they can then come back and really have a sense of what they want to do. Because as any college student knows, that's the thing at the top of your mind. What are you going to do when you graduate? Having a sense of what you want to do is really important. And so we try to give them that connection to the community.
Awesome. So tell me about Baby Aviva Orangutan Diva.
Yeah. So Baby Aviva Orangutan Diva, it is a labor of love, is a heartfelt tribute from a brokenhearted father to his dear baby girl, to my own daughter, Baby Aviva. And so it's for me, when my daughter tragically passed away last November 2020, not many people got a chance to know her. One of the things at her celebration of life, usually you see a lot of people saying, this is how this person impacted me, or this is how this person, a funny story about this person even, or, you tend to remember a lot of those highlights in that person's life. However, when Aviva died, there weren't that many people that actually got that chance to know her. Even my own brother never got a chance to meet her. And so my purpose with this book is to really spread that, spread her personality, her character, her the love that she had. She was just, such a lovable little daughter, and spread that with all of the other friends and family members that did not get the chance to meet her, that did not get the chance to get to be in her presence. And so it's a fun, creative medium to do so. When I actually wrote the script to this book just a week or so after she died, because I just had all this emotion that I just needed to express and get out through in an artistic way. And so the messages in the book, they're about teamwork. They're about overcoming adversity through perseverance, problem solving in a creative manner, but then finally, and most importantly, being true to yourself, while also doing something good for the community. And all of those messages are kind of encapsulated in a really cute way, I would say, a way that would be enlightening for small readers and large readers, parents and kids alike, and entertaining as well. So there's a lot that I want to do with the book, and getting that message out about Baby Aviva Orangutan Diva is very important to me.
So I hope I didn't pull a message out that maybe that wasn't intended, but there was a certain fearlessness about the main character going over there to get those bananas and not being afraid of the danger or confronting the danger along the way. Was that any element that you were writing, or is that just my way of, is that my interpretation?
Yeah, it's really, there's a lot of, I remember going back to my own grade school. I remember archetypes and really archetypes being, representations and symbolism of things that are for like real in real life. And so, in this book, this little orangutan who doesn't have, any strength or any kind of, she's this small, diminutive, creature that loves to sing and dance, and she doesn't really, she wouldn't strike you as the brave person that you would nominate to go ahead and try to get this bananas across this river filled with crocodiles, as well as in this jungle that was protected by these tigers. However, what she can do is really sing and dance, and that's kind of her gift, really her superpower, if you will. And she gets across the river with the help of her friend Sophia, the elephant, and she swings into the trees. She confronts that tiger. She sees the tiger growling. He's like, roar, right beneath the tree. And she sees the bananas right behind him. And she's frightful at first. She's fearful. However, what she thinks to herself and what she knows is, hey, I can sing and dance. Like that's really what I have. She starts singing, and then lo and behold, a few minutes later, the tiger starts dancing to the rhythm and dancing to the beat. And then eventually they both end up dancing together and become really good friends. And so, that's another message about not judging a book by its cover. Really, any friend or any potential enemy that you might come across, you could be your best friend as well. But the more powerful message is really to kids. There's a lot of things that we might be afraid of. We might be afraid of going to a new school, or a bug, or maybe the monsters in the closet, whatever it is. There's things that we face along the way in terms of adversity. For my daughter, it was several trips to the hospital. But I think, thinking outside the box and not trying to, defeat this victim with brute force, if you will. But, looking within you and kind of deciding, what do I have to offer to solve this problem, is really the underlying message there.
Yeah. Now it's tough writing children's books. I mean, there's a lot of them out there. I've written two, and I probably have a warehouse full of them, because it's hard to find an audience for them. How's the book doing, and how would people get their hands on it?
Yeah, so the book is doing fairly well. It's hit the #1 bestseller on Amazon in a few different categories.
Awesome.
We're just about 100 reviews. I don't want to speak for the audience, but you can go ahead and read the reviews on Amazon, as well as any other bookstore out there, Barnes and Noble, Kobo. There's an audio version as well. I've narrated that, had a lot of fun doing that. And really, the illustrations have been the thing that people really love. The illustrations, as well as the rhyming narrative, because I read a lot of children's books with my own kids, and I know that when you read it for the 25th time, you kind of want it to be something something that the parents like as well. So there's some hidden things that parents would understand that kids might not, as well, and yeah, the illustrations really make it pop and kind of have brought it to life. And so that whole creative process has been really fun, working with Carl, the illustrator on this book. And we do plan to have a second one in store, probably coming up next year. So
that's awesome. And, it's nice when a book, that's the beauty of The Simpsons. And to me, the frustration with shows like Barney, kids watch it, parents want to pull their hair out. But when a parent reads your book and they can actually enjoy it too, especially since they're going to have to read it 100 times, that certainly helps.
Yeah, no. I definitely took a parent's approach. I have two other kids, so 3 total, but I know what it's like to, read the same book again and again. So want to make it a little bit creative and entertaining as well. So
it can be mind numbing.
Yeah. But actually, to tell you the truth, we just had an offsite for my main job that I do, and in it, is I actually used the book for a lot of different business lessons that I was actually sharing with the team, and a lot of these lessons can actually be applied in the adult life. A lot of times, we get scared. There's a lot of times that we should, ask for help, which this book, touches on, and the importance of teamwork, not trying to be a lone wolf. And I really do believe that, the power of teams is much greater than going alone. So yeah, it's meaningful for many different types of readers.
Absolutely. Now, you're also writing a couple of adult books, one about grieving. Let's talk about that one first.
Yeah. So this is still in the works, and I've written most of it. But what I wanted to do is, through this, one of the common refrains that I get from people, after they say, "I'm so sorry for your loss," they usually say something along the lines of, "I can't even imagine." And some people have even said, "I don't even want to imagine," given that, no parent wants to imagine that, their child could die. But for me, that saying, it's really hard, to hear, because I don't really know what to do with that. I don't know how that's supposed to actually make me feel comforted, to tell you the truth.
And I said that to you in the beginning of our interview, and I apologize for that.
But
it's an awkward moment, because you don't know. And so it's hard to know how to say that.
Yeah. And one thing that I've learned in this past year, I've learned a lot as I've gone through the grieving journey, is that society in general doesn't really process grief that well. We don't really know, how to process grief, especially those that are, the tragic variety. Whereas in contrast, we put weddings and gender reveal parties and all of these things on pedestals, all the, the positive things in life. However, when someone really needs help, and when there's the unspeakable happens, what I found is that, there's tends to be this ambivalence, or almost this, I don't know what to say, or I don't know what to do, so I'll just ignore you. And that's, tough. It's very difficult to experience, because you would expect, and I would expect, some of my best friends to really be there. And what I found is that a lot of people confuse distance for space. They sound the same, but they're very different. When we say space, it's really about giving someone a platform, giving someone the opportunity to express himself or herself. All of the 5 stages of grief: the denial, the anger, the shock, and the emotions that come with it. What I found is that a lot of people just aren't comfortable with that, whether to protect themselves, or whether it's like they don't want this to happen to their own kids, so they don't even mention it. They just would rather give us distance and stay away, and not contact, not text, not call, which is, hurtful. And, it's not, obviously, it doesn't change the situation itself. But what I've learned is that there's better ways that society, and friends and family in particular, can be a better source of support, can be a better source of help, just by showing up, and just by a simple checking in and saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about you," or thinking about Aviva, your daughter, because that makes it feel that we're not alone. The grieving journey is a very lonely one. You kind of walk it by yourself, and even my wife and I have had different grieving journeys, very different grieving journeys, and what I would say is that we, being society, can really do a better job of really embracing those and comforting those that go through this. So.
Sure. It's tough, though. I mean, it's tough when you're on the, 'cause I can speak for having, when I lost my parents, there are some people that just stay away from you, and there are other people that can be comforting, but it is an awkward time for them, and it really shouldn't be about them. It's more about you and how they can help you. So the whole thing just kind of gets confused. It's not an easy situation for anybody.
Yeah, it's that the awkwardness and the fear that they would say something that's upsetting, and it or do something that upsetting. And what I would say is the act of not doing anything at all is actually the more upsetting thing. Obviously, I've heard them all. I've heard, she's in a better place, or God has her, now, and it's better than being here. Like just different sayings that are just, or the other one is a common one is, you're so strong. I can't imagine you're so strong. It's like, what else am I supposed to be? I have to, still keep living, for my family, but there's no other way that I can, go through this. And so what I would say is the act of not doing anything at all is actually, stands out a lot more. And you did say you had friends that were there. What I would say, the commonality of the friends that have checked in, and some have come out of the woodworks, people I haven't talked to in 10 years, getting in touch and checking in. And what I've found with them is that they've tended to all have lost a loved one, whether that's a parent or a spouse or a child. They really know what that grieving journey looks like, and how lonely that is. And we as human beings, every single one of us will go through grief at one point or the other. And I guess there's different time periods of life that we learn about it. And I've certainly learned a heck of a lot this year, more than I ever wish to know. So
sure. Well, that'll be a valuable book. I'm sure people can use it for sure, because, if you can help ease somebody through pain, it's a lot better than just disappearing and not being there, as you say. So I certainly will be interested in checking that out. And you also, the other one is called Dad Hacks.
Yeah. Just before we get to that, in terms of, one thing that someone had told me was, when you lose that, there's a saying that's, when you lose your parent, you lose your past. When you lose your spouse, you lose your present. And when you lose your child, you lose your future. And that saying, couldn't be more horrible to hear, because I don't believe I've lost my future. I don't believe that Aviva has lost her future either. And so going back to the children's book, one of the intents of that is really to give Aviva, that future, and let her actually impact, positive impact a lot of these kids that she will eventually and hopefully touch in a positive way. And I think, when we think about futures, that doesn't necessarily mean that person has to physically be here. And I think she has much more to say and do and impact others. And I'm going to be a vessel, going to be a channel for her in life, to really spread her message, and to parents, spread the message of cherishing your children, and really leading by love. Cherish your children, cherish every single moment that you have with them. Because, for me sitting here today, I wish I could change her diaper. I wish I could get up at 3 a.m. with her when she's, not able to sleep. I wish, she would throw a temper tantrum, because all of those things that you feel are inconveniences as a parent, it gives you a whole different perspective, being on this side. Unfortunately, every single parent, they want, when they take their baby home for the first time from the hospital when they're born, they just want their child to have a better future, have a really good future. And for me, now that my daughter's not here physically, all I want for her is to be remembered, and really through that, having a really good future. So,
well, you've done a beautiful job with that book, and that's certainly going to be a great memory when people see the dedication, and that's a part of it. So, and it's tough to talk about that and then turn the transition to Dad Hacks, but I want you to be able to talk about that.
Yeah. So it's this book has kind of been in the works for a while. And so my oldest my oldest kid is going to be 5 in about 3 weeks. And so I started writing this right after his birth. And it started as a collection of kind of messages to myself, almost more diary kind of format, and kind of telling my future self, like, this is, these are the things that have helped, that have worked, in terms of, making the whole process of parenting a lot more fun and hopefully easier as well. What I would say, the biggest advice I give to all new parents, and especially new dads, is patience. I think parents is, parenting is a whole new, world of really understanding your limits of patience, like what you actually can accept, from not only your child, but also yourself, your spouse, etc. There's that's something that you really have to kind of increase and grow. But dad hacks, it's not just about that. It's just a whole collection of different, it's basically 100 different hacks that can be used to just help you as a father, or you as a parent, to do a better job. And that's really subjective. But what I would say is, we all as parents, or mostly, hopefully all of us, would say that parenting is our most important job. Yet how much time and effort and resource do we actually put into understanding that job? When we get like undergraduate degrees or master's degrees in college, we're learning a specific trade or a specific topic. But with parenting, as your documentary reveals, you don't have to have a license to be a parent, and you really don't have any manual. There's no guidebook, and there's no rule book, and there's tons of different ways to be a parent, tons of different things that can work. What I would say is, at the very core of it, if you lead by love, if you really have that patience, establish that respect, that rapport, with your son or daughter, I think that is the most important thing. And so a lot of the topics are really about that. And it's presented in a more creative fashion. So.
Yeah. In my film, License to Parent, I mean, obviously people don't need a license, but parenting may be the toughest job in the world. Anybody can do it. There's no requirement. You don't have to pass a test. So the definition of parenting almost should probably be changed, because it's what you do after the child's born that makes whether or not you're the parent. You can adopt a child. You're not the birth parent. You could end up being a much better influence in that child's life than the birth parents were. So it's being there. It's doing that job every day. And it's tough. Kids will test you at every level.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, just coming back to, full circle to Open Dreams, it's really, that environment that you create, and, that tabula rasa that you're giving this child, whether you adopt them or whether it's your natural child, what you do in that first really 5 years, the first 6 years is really a formative experience, because after that, kids go off into kindergarten and grade school. Then their influencers become, their friends and their teachers, and then others. And then you gradually just, you don't have as much time, and you have a whole, different dynamic with your child. But I think, establishing respect in a loving way, not in a, my mother is Filipino. And so she was this Asian tiger mom. And so she was more of a dictator type. There's a lot of notes that I made to myself that's not what I'm going to be like when I'm a parent.
Yeah.
But it also doesn't mean you're not having any guidance and not having any rules, because that's the whole opposite side. So there's a medium, there's a balance of trying to establish, what are the norms, what is right, what is wrong, and really giving your child. For me, it's about building confidence and really building their self-esteem and confidence, because I think that ultimately is the most important trait that you can really help guide your child, and giving them love is one of the big ways that you can do that.
So Hans, if you had to give people advice, somebody that might have an idea or something they want to do that they think can make a difference in the world, but they're just, for whatever reason, they're just sitting on it and not doing anything, what would you tell them?
Yeah, taking a business lens actually to this, the first thing I would say is really, talk about it. Talk about it with your friends, your spouse, your colleagues. See if it actually makes sense, and see, when we have thoughts in our head, they can be just a pinball arcade of ideas just bouncing around. I have them all the time. I have them in the shower. I have them, when I'm sleeping. But what I would say is there's different ideas that surface to the top that you think you're passionate about, and that's very important. You should be passionate about what you're doing. Otherwise, it will show in the work that you do, and it will show in the amount of time that you actually spend on it. But trying to find that right product market fit. Does it actually make sense? Is there a market out there for it, or are you just catering to your own needs? I think that's the other thing. Like, is there actually a need for this? Because the best businesses and or ideas really come from a needs-based perspective rather than a wants-based perspective. So if it's just something that you think people will want to have, yeah, it might work if it's really really extraordinary. But if they need it, and so like in for education, for instance, for Open Dreams, people certainly need to have that ability, that platform. There's other businesses that I've done in the past, and if I were to kind of say what's worked and what hasn't, it's been the need-based businesses have been the ones that have worked, and those that were just more luxury type or optional type are not the greatest. But talking to people, getting feedback, getting surveys, trying to do tests or demos of it is really important. So yeah. So
awesome. That's great advice. The want versus the need. If people need something, it's going to be a lot easier to get it out there. So what's the best way when we now need you? What's the best way to get in touch and find you?
All right. So the best way to reach out to me is through Aviva's Daddy. That's on all my handles. So AVIVAS DADDY. That is on Twitter. That is on Instagram. It's also avivasdaddy@gmail.com. But you can also reach me via my website. So hanskullberg.com, HANSKULLBERG.com. You can also see, all of the, cool things that Aviva is actually doing as well. So some cool stuff there.
Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on today and sharing your wisdom and your experience. And I think that book's going to be important, especially, I mean, the children's book is awesome, but the one about grieving and just to be able to help be a support for people, it's very, very important. And I appreciate you sharing it.
Yeah, no, and going back to needs and versus wants, I've read a lot of grieving books from parents and really recounting a lot of their own experience and a lot of their own children. But a lot of times that intended audience has been for other bereaved parents and not necessarily for the colleagues, the friends, the family of them. And so that's the audience for this, and it's a much wider audience. But I would say that I think I haven't read something that's really touches on that subject, but I think it really is needed for all of us, parents that have lost a child.
All right. Thanks, Hans. Appreciate you.
Okay. Thanks so much, George. Thanks for being here. Thanks for letting me come on.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this week's Move the World podcast. I would really value your feedback as to what you think of the program, guests you might want to hear, what you might want presented differently. Any kind of feedback would be welcome. Just drop me an email to movetheworldfilms@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.